All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone, clients. If you're not a client, thank you for excuse me, thank you for joining us, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar on understanding the critical changes to the labor market. And so, before we get started, just like to do a couple things specifically with housekeeping. You may have heard Jamie and I were talking earlier, but yes, this will be recorded, and anyone who has registered, the recording link will be sent to you. And so just want to let you know that. When you have a question, up near like your mic button, there should be a little chat feature. It's like a little speech bubble. Just click on that, and when you have a question, go ahead and type your question in there, and we will either get to it right away, or we will have a Q&A session at the end and we'll be able to get to them at the end. But if we don't get to them right away, then we'll make sure we hit them on the end. Little introduction for SESCO. I'll let Jamie talk in a little bit more detail, but SESCO is one of our key partners here at Bankers Insurance. They are a national human resource and employee relations consulting firm. They've been in business since 1945, so a very reputable, long-standing company. And our clients are able to access them through, well, you receive complimentary email and phone support if you ever have any sort of any questions on human resource matters. So if you have a SESCO rep, by all means, reach out to them directly with those questions. But if not, then at the end of this, please contact your sales exec, your Bankers Insurance sales exec, and they will start the process to get you set up with SESCO. So I just wanted to mention that. And without any more ado, I will introduce Jamie. Jamie Hasty is Vice President at SESCO, and she'll be presenting today. And thank you so much, Jamie.
Thanks, David, and welcome to everybody. I appreciate you all taking time out of your, today's Wednesday afternoon. We're going to talk a little bit about understanding the labor force and some critical changes that are going on there with regard to the Great Resignation and some leadership and culture trends that we're seeing in the HR hemisphere. And these challenges are hitting your independent small businesses all the way up to your Fortune 100. So nobody is free from feeling these challenges. So let's jump right in. Let's talk a little bit about the Great Resignation. You've heard this term coined a lot. And it probably started back in the summer when folks really started using the term, oh, this is the Great Resignation. And so through, I guess it was November of last year, I mean, you really saw just insane numbers of individuals leaving companies and perhaps even exiting the workforce altogether. And it is not solely because of one particular thing. A recent survey, the Korn Ferry survey, looked at over half of professionals that they believe employee turnover, attrition as we call it, will increase in 22. So, a lot of people were talking about, oh, the Great Resignation of 2021, 2022 is going to be great or better. Don't worry about it. Things will slow down. We're not seeing that. In fact, we're seeing an uptick in people jumping ship. On top of the fact that even prior to the pandemic in 2019, we were seeing a highly competitive job market. Okay. Then the pandemic hit. Obviously, a lot of change, personal and professional change occurred throughout the last 2.5, almost 3 years now, I feel like. And so, that really caused many employees to kind of take a step back and say, okay, what am I doing? What am I doing here? How does this job, this company, my leadership fit into things that I value, things that are important to me? And so you've seen this complete shift in the mindset of American workers across the country. There are obviously going to be certain industries that have higher attrition, certain departments that have higher attrition, certain regions that have higher attrition. But, you know, we're in this tight labor market. Whether it's job creation or unemployment ticking down, there's a lot of things that play into this, and we could literally spend days digging in. So I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but you know, you've got to challenge your screening and hiring practices as well as retention pieces. And the retention pieces plays really large into the culture that we're going to dig into in some of our next slides. You're hearing a lot about wages. And the common misconception is that historically people leave companies because of money. Well, normally I would say that's not the case. They leave because of leadership, which is still, in most cases, very true. However, because we're in such a tight labor market, heck, if you work in healthcare, name the price and you'll get it. It's hard. And other industries are feeling very, very aggressive in their compensation practices. So, you know, you really have to challenge the market, what market rates are, the ability to pay, and the internal value that that position holds to the organization. And what you're seeing is also more sign-on bonuses, incentives, additional benefits, additional paid leave, non-monetary benefits, work from home. All of these things play into why are you attractive? We have to get out of the mindset, particularly in leadership and HR, of you should want to work for us. It's completely flipped. We now have to prove why they should want to work for us. Okay, what are we bringing to the table? What value are we bringing to that employee's life? How does our mission, our vision, our core goals and values and performance and all of these things that play into culture, how is that going to align with what they want out of a career or a position? Okay. Additionally, kind of going back a little bit to compensation, keep in mind that when you do incentives or sign-on bonuses and things like that, it's not just, oh, I'm going to give you $5,000, you know, if you've made it out of the first 6 months. There are wage and hour implications to creative pay practices like that as well for certain classes of individuals. So, you know, don't just go back and say, oh, Jamie at SESCO said throw out bonuses. And then, you know, if you haven't had it vetted by an HR person to look at how to structure it, you know, does this trigger additional overtime compensation under wage and hour, you know, have it reviewed by your consultant or your employment attorney just to make sure we've dotted all of our I's and crossed all of our T's. So the Great Resignation is not going anywhere. You know, I think you really have to look at each department or division within your organization, depending on upon how large or small you are, and look for trends. Sometimes that trend is an ineffective leader. Sometimes that trend is an overall cultural issue within the organization. Sometimes it's a lack of training and development. All of these things matter. If you want to get your return on investment and kind of stop the hemorrhaging from constant turnover, you have to really put in the time and the work to make things attractive and to make it a place they want to stay. So again, I could talk days about the Great Resignation, but we've got lots to do. So there was a recent talent and leadership survey that was conducted on a national basis. And it kind of came out with some trends that we're seeing that all play into the culture and what employers are feeling right now with the labor market and the changing landscape that is going on. So you may have heard David and I talking earlier. One, I have 2 very large dogs. Well, The little one is 16 weeks and he's 50 pounds, but he's in a crate, so you won't see him. But there's a high probability that the big 4-year-old blockhead will roll in here. You'll see his tail. He may fuss, whatever. But we were talking about this work from home and the Zooming or the Teams and how people have become in many ways less formal with their interactions. Doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't still a level of professionalism there, but I think people are more understanding of just life in general. That yes, there's going to be a dog barking, and don't be embarrassed because we understand. So it's nice to see that empathy being demonstrated across many organizations. So people are working anywhere, anytime. And if the pandemic has taught us nothing, it's that work from home, telework, all of this technology can be a really wonderful thing within reason. Some organizations have overused it, and they're feeling the effects of a major disconnect because they've gotten away from actual communication. They're just sending chat messages all the time, and we have lost the face-to-face. You've got still boomers are retiring. You've got kind of your late 30s, early 40s individuals that have kind of taken a step back. We call them a career nomad, and they're looking for change. Again, that's one of the big results that came out of the Great Resignation, and feedback that we're hearing from that is you have these mid 30s to let's just even say 50s, and they're like, what am I doing? What do I want to do with my life? Do I want to be in this repetitive type environment, or do I want to do something different that's meaningful? So you're seeing a lot of this transition. You also are hearing a lot about and seeing a huge pushback on people not wanting to return to the office. They've gotten taste of freedom, so we say. They've worked from home. They've done well with it. And listen, it's not for everybody. There are some people that physically want to be in the office and that do better in the office, and that's wonderful. So it's about meeting people where they're at, where they can be most productive, and where we can support them within reason and business need for that. But look, 36% of professionals are planning to take a different job sometime within the next year. That's a lot. They're challenging what they need. And again, it's not all about money. I've been doing some screening and hiring, as I'm sure many of you all on this call have been doing as well. And I've come across people that are like, yes, you're 10,000 under what I'm making right now, but to be honest, it's more meaningful to me, or it's a shorter commute, or I have the ability to work from home, whereas my current company is forcing me to come back in. So, they're really challenging what is going to work for their personal life. And obviously we're working smarter and not necessarily harder. I'll talk a little bit more about paid leave policies and getting creative there, but there are some interesting trends going on with time off from work as well. So we also have a connection conundrum. I mentioned some people are overusing the technology. So what we encourage, especially from a cultural perspective, one, communication is the #1 issue in every organization. We're either not communicating enough, we're over communicating and the message is getting lost, or we're using the incorrect channels to communicate. And that can be multifaceted, but these 2-hour-long Zoom calls, done. Don't even do it. Short, sweet, to the point. You can follow up with those things. I was actually having a business lunch with a couple of ladies in the Richmond metro area last week. One is in healthcare, one is in technology, one is a recruiter. And then of course there was me, who does, sometimes I feel like I do a little bit of all of that. But it was interesting because the feedback that I was hearing, and they all work for major, Fortune 500 companies. The feedback was they and many of their team members were getting very frustrated with just the constant scheduling of Teams or Zooms or what have you. And it came back, well, this literally could have been like a Teams chat. Like, why did I need to get on the camera? So just, I say that to plant the seed of gain a pulse of what's going on within your organization or with your clients that you're working with, if you're providing services to clients, and read the room, for lack of a better phrase. Is this something that really needs to be a scheduled hour-long, on-camera, structured, or is this something that can be done via an email or a telephone call, and really work to fine-tune those pieces? Because we have to be deliberate. We have to use the technology when it's appropriate, but then also be deliberate about keeping relationship and deeper connections with your employees. Okay. Because if we get into this constant, oh, it's a Zoom, it's a Zoom, it's a Zoom, it's a Zoom, people check out. How many times have you seen people not turn on their cameras? And it only takes one person to not turn on their camera before you watch everybody else follow suit. I'm guilty of it. I'm sure David's smiling. He's done it before too. I know he has. But, so just watch for those things. Really making a point to keep that relationship and that connection with your employees is important, and to where they feel like they're being heard and understood. Because when we have connected employees, it builds that commitment to leadership, and they're less likely to jump ship when they feel committed to the leader. So also, keep an eye on that talent that may be hidden in plain sight. Many of us are doing more with less, meaning, we've scaled down on the number of people in the organization, or we haven't been able to replace people that have turned over because people keep bailing on interviews or whatever the reason is. This is a wonderful opportunity to invest in your people. Training and development cannot fall to the wayside in 2022 and moving forward, or else your culture will be impacted. Okay. Reskilling, cross-training, upskilling, all of these things help reduce turnover and help fill some of those roles that may have been harder to replace or harder to hire for. So a lot of times when things are crazy or budgets are tight, the first thing that's cut is training and development. It always is. Don't let that happen. You want to do on-the-job learning experiences, mentorships, and invest to help career pathing or career laddering. Depending on what industry you're in, those terms are interchangeable. But you have to look for those hidden gems. Look for the people that you can grow up within the organization. Again, it's an ROI. You also want to move from disruption to reinvention. We have all gone through a lot of change. Companies have completely revamped how and why and everything that they're doing. Gone are the days of we've always done it this way. Okay. So with change or disruption, whatever you want to call it, can come lots of feels, lots of feelings. So make sure that disruption is meant to cause like uncomfortableness. So this goes back to your communication and your connection with your employees. When you are changing things, make sure that your leadership is really communicating well and touching base and supporting and listening and hearing the feedback. Don't just have it go into a black hole where nothing is done about it. Your staff members are wonderful assets to the organization. They have ideas, they have opinions, they have solutions that we as leaders may have never even thought of, or perhaps we tried it once and it didn't work, so we've kind of like cut it off from any potential in the future. But maybe we need to revisit. So we have an opportunity to reinvent the organization and do things more efficiently, which also helps morale and motivation. There is a large push for sustainability and where the organizations are now falling with regard to their stance on environmental pieces, social aspects. We've talked about that before in the past, I know. Governance, all of these things that matter to individuals. Your individual core values, your thoughts and feelings on, social issues. These things are now, and they have been trickling into the workplace for many, many years, but you're really seeing employees focus on, well, this is how I view the situation going on. And they're watching to see how the organization as well is going to address those things. Sometimes they don't address it, sometimes they do, sometimes you have differences of leadership. And so this is a very sticky piece that we're seeing, because certainly many of these social and environmental things can play into politics. And what do I always tell you? Don't discuss politics at the workplace. But there is a mass demand from the American workforce that organizations are going to take action or take a stance, whatever that stance may be, for sustainability, environmentally conscious and social conscious type behaviors from the organization. So be on the lookout for that as well. One of the other things, and obviously this is really important for the bankers insurance world as well, is that there is a significant focus on health and wellness, okay, physical and mental. This is where it's really important to lean on your account managers, their support staff, your brokers, to make sure that you have the resources from bankers to support your staff. And I know many of the brokers and the account managers, and they do a wonderful job. But, burnout is real. There are many things that have been going on in the last 2.5, 3 years where people feel a lack of connection, they feel stress, they feel burnout, they feel all of the feels. And so having the right resources in place through your benefits can be really helpful in maintaining and putting a focus and emphasis on the importance of employee health and wellness. Okay. Mental health initiatives, fitness related perks, doing, all of these things are important. When ACA came into play back in 2012, you saw a huge push for wellness plans. Well, wellness plans and then they kind of died down a little bit because they are very intricate to write because of the rules and that sort of thing. But we're seeing a huge uptick in them again. EAPs, free gym memberships, flexible work life. All of these things play into promoting health and wellness from both the physical as well as the emotional side. And leadership needs to be prepared and get training on how to have those meaningful conversations with staff members within reason about how are they feeling and doing at work. How can I make your time here the best it can possibly be? Because again, it goes back to that relationship piece. But then also leaders need to know when HR can step in or when they need to go to HR if we're talking about, health or medical type stuff that may require Family Medical Leave, Americans with Disabilities Act, all of these things. So there needs to be some skill training there for managers within your organization. And there has to also be an understanding that health and well-being needs to be center stage if you want to keep your employees and attract and retain. So. Also, folks are getting very, very creative on where they are searching for talent, since there is a mass shortage. Things where, you know, we would have required a 4-year degree. People are saying, forget it. If you've got experience, you've got qualities that I can train and do, I'll forego that. So again, it goes back to challenging your job descriptions, challenging what is required for the job, looking outside of the box, somebody that may not necessarily have industry specific experience, but they have skill sets that could transition them into it. You know, everybody is recruiting on Indeed and LinkedIn. They all, you know, there's like 500 other million online resources for posting jobs, and they all cross post on each other, right? So, you know, you've got to go back to some of the I call them old school methods. You know, look at the people you're interacting with and other businesses within your community, and have you recognized certain qualities or skill sets about your customer service rep at the bank? Have a conversation. I mean, don't like steal other people's employees. That's not what I'm saying, but think outside of the box. Think, you know, make connections, network all of the time, because that's where people are pulling and filling positions from. So there's also an increase in accountability. Accountability, what I mean about accountability is accountability from leadership. Culture will make or break your organization. And many times when we see our employee opinion surveys come back, what the employees are saying in terms of culture and leadership and benefits and job security and all of these things, in many scenarios, does not match what leadership thinks or says about how employees feel. Okay, so, you know, you really want to make sure that leadership is taking the time and the opportunity to determine what the culture is. Does it match what we want it to be? Check-ins, one-on-ones, meaningful, crucial conversations, collaborating with staff, getting them involved is really, really important. So that accountability is really hitting the C-suite, as we call it. There are, you know, the senior leadership is also feeling a lot of pressure to hire and develop from within, especially with regard to underrepresented groups. If you're affirmative action employer, because you have federal contracts, you know, so they're feeling the heat a little bit. They're realizing, hey, the labor force is not playing by the old set of rules. For a number of rules. So, you know, they're trying to change that. So you'll see a lot of accountability be a trend this year, and how it impacts culture. We are also seeing the shift from me to we. You know, there is a lot that we as organizations offer. And so really training and empowering the managers to go from the term me to we. A lot of times when we have those staff meetings, it's like, well, my team. Well, yes, you may be the supervisor of that team, but when we're in a leadership meeting with other department directors, it's a we. Because your team relies on my team, relies on my team, relies on my team. It's always a trickle down effect. So we've got to get out of those silos, because we're all working together for the greater goal, the greater good. And if we want to have this wonderful culture and this community type environment, silos don't matter, right? So it's all about collaboration and changing the terminology, which over time changes the mindset. Okay. So there are some other legal trends going on in 2022, you know, with regard to medical and religious accommodations that generally upticked decently with regard to the vaccine mandates and that sort of thing. But we are seeing a lot of accommodation requests for mental needs, the stressors of what's going on, work from home requests. The Department of Labor EEOC is loving those right now. So again, make sure when you have medical or religious accommodation needs, that you are collaborating with an expert, an HR consultant, somebody that, or an employment law attorney, somebody that understands the intricacies of Title VII. With culture, obviously, COVID is continuing to dominate. However, you know, CDC backed off significantly in the last, 48 hours on things. Today is Wednesday. Yeah, so Monday or Tuesday. So, you know, if you're here in Virginia, in fact, you may not be aware, but the Department of Labor, OSHA, the permanent safety standards, are actually in the process of being rescinded. So, you know, right now, technically, all employees are in masks because of the COVID, which is no longer required under the new administration executive order, as well as the OSHA, VOSH, Virginia OSHA, is rescinding those. You will see other states, North Carolina, you know, any other state that has additional safety measures in place under their state OSHA plan is starting to scale those things back. You still have job hopping and resignations due to COVID, lack of paid off time to required. Now, some of that has curtailed a smidge from when we were at 10 days quarantine, now down to 5. But again, this goes back to what type of culture do we want to have? Do we have a appropriate paid leave policy to where employees don't feel like they need to be dishonest about what's going on with their medical health, but for fear of not having money to pay the bills? So it's that balance there. Let's see. Let's skip that one. Let's talk about communication. So, you know, communication can be tough. You really want to make sure that there is a communication plan in place for your organization. And I know that sounds silly, but it's not. You need to be deliberate. What are we communicating? How does it need to be delivered? Why is it important? Who's going to deliver it? Because many of us on this call have various departments. Some individuals have various locations spread out. So, or various shifts. So ensuring that there is a plan and policy changes or information that's going to impact how people do their jobs, there needs to be a plan in place on how that information is disseminated. It can't just be willy-nilly. And a lot of times it is. And then we get into either A, we haven't followed up to make sure that it's understood, we're addressing questions. We don't even know if the third shift got it, but they heard about it from first shift, from somebody else who put their own spin on it. It's the game of telephone, my friends. Okay. So you have to be consistent in your efforts to make sure that employees feel valued. And a lot of that deals with employee engagement and culture. If you have not done an employee opinion survey, and I am not saying do not do your own. Do not make up your own survey and issue it out to employees. One, they're not going to participate. And two, they're not going to trust that the process is going to be, I don't want to use the term confidential, but they're not going to trust that the feedback will be received in a manner in which you can't identify them. Okay. If you're going to do a survey, you need to collaborate with some HR consulting firm professional that has a statistically valid and reliable survey. Okay. Statistically valid and reliable. Otherwise, the results that you're going to get are junk. They're going to be skewed. You have to have validity and reliability to your survey. You should be doing a survey every 2 years, or else how do you know what the true pulse of the organization is? Because employees are going to tell you what they think you want to hear. unless they have a means in which to do that to where they feel like they can't be identified. Okay, that's why some organizations used to have those like employee suggestion drop box. But it only takes one situation where somebody figured out who said what, and then people suddenly stop using the drop box. Okay, so challenge the employee opinion survey. It really is a good tool. If you get a good one, it's a good tool, assuming leadership actually takes it seriously and they are going to look at the results and work through some of the organizational action plans. Look at employee reward systems, and it's not again all about money, but also don't do like chintzy little gifts that aren't meaningful. Create an employee, reward or employee engagement little council. Let them come up with ways in which the organization can recognize, can support in ways that are meaningful. Perhaps it's 2 extra days off. Perhaps it is food. Some organizations, listen, you can keep them happy by just bringing in breakfast and cupcakes once a month, and they love it, and that makes them happy. So, again, it goes back to knowing your people. Who doesn't love a cupcake? Let's be honest. So you also have to really continue to focus on transparent and frequent communication, one-on-ones, doing your, performance evals, having crucial conversations. How are you doing? What can I do to help support you? What can I do to make your life better, easier, more meaningful while you're here at work? That's really, really important. And then leadership has to be present. I talk a lot about this in my leadership courses that I do with other groups, and nobody wants to work for that manager that's never physically there, and that's hard because a lot of us are working from home now, but that's never available or visible. I've been in organizations where shh, be quiet. No. I've been in organizations where leadership was all on, like, let's just say the 3rd floor of the building, and everybody else was below. And this particular organization, all of the offices had very dark mahogany furniture upstairs because it was the C-suite up there. And all of the employees actually called it Mahogany Row because leadership never came downstairs. And if you went up there, it was like night and day compared to the rest of the organization. It was, very ornate, like stained glass windows. Like, it was beautiful. Don't get me wrong. I was like, I would love to work up here. But there was a complete disconnect in terms of how the employees viewed senior leadership. Stop it. How employees reviewed senior leadership and how leadership thought that they were viewed. They were like, well, anybody's welcome upstairs. I'm like, no, you all aren't going downstairs. You're not present. You need to make rounds. Now, again, different industry, pre-pandemic, but you've got to walk the walk and talk the talk. Don't do anything that you're not willing to do yourself, or don't ask your employees to do anything you're not willing to do yourself. So refreshing your culture, recognition is truly, truly important. If you want to keep those employees that you have invested time and money in, give recognition, and that comes from good goals, reinforcing your values, showing genuine appreciation. That helps connect teams, and then make sure that we are celebrating those milestones together as well. A lot of times in the employee feedback surveys that we do, there's a category on employee appreciation or recognition, and it always scores low. It's one of the, there are always 3 or 4 low categories, and employee recognition is included in that. And it's because the only time they're getting the feedback is when they do something wrong. It's very few and far between that the milestones and the successes are celebrated together. Other things that you're going to want to challenge, particularly if you are an HR individual on this call, your paid leave policies. Okay, I mean, I still have some clients in certain industries where you don't have any paid leave at all until after you've been there for a year. Those days are gone, folks, because guess what? They can go down the street and get 2 or 3 weeks paid right off the bat for $10 more an hour. Okay. Challenge your paid leave policies. You have some companies that are going to unlimited PTO. Unlimited. Doesn't matter. As long as your job is done, the clients are served, the patients are taken care of, the kids are taught, whatever it is, take as much time as you need. Obviously, there are performance standards that go along with that, but you're seeing this trend because it's about work-life balance. Okay. Flex work schedules are going to continue to be important. Performance management we talked about, and that training and development we also talked about. I'm sorry, Cooper's very upset today at 2:11, so I apologize for him.
Can't hear him. It's no worries.
Oh, good. You can't? Lovely. Okay. So let's talk about job packing. So what we're hearing a lot, especially related to the burnout, is that we've been doing more with less post-pandemic or during the pandemic, and employees are really at their breaking point right now of, I can't do much more, and I can't keep doing what I'm doing like for the next few weeks, right? So they're burnt out, they're done. They've been assigned, this job, this job, this job, this person left, oh, take on this additional duty. Sometimes they haven't gotten compensated for that additional bloated list of duties, and it's not sustainable, okay? So you really need to encourage managers to take a step back, look at the volume of the work that is appropriate and doable for that position, but also that person, and they need to start really challenging that. Are some of these menial tasks no longer necessary? Can things be outsourced? Can things be automated? Can we reshift to avoid losing this particular person? Because typically in leadership, what happens is we overwhelm or we job pack our superstars because they're superstars. They can do it. They don't let us down. They're always willing to take on additional duties, that sort of thing. But there are some managers that take advantage of the other duties as assigned. Okay. So make sure that the additional duties are kind of spread out as best they can be. And if somebody is showing signs of burnout, then that should be a red flag to you that they're doing too much, or what they are doing is perhaps not doable within the time frame that we've required them to get it done in. Okay. Because again, you've got employees that are like, 5 o'clock, I'm out. I'm not going to answer calls at 6 p.m. or I'm not going to answer emails on the weekends when you send them to me. And we're seeing that pushback of, again, my time is my time. So work on the job packing problem. Compensation is still really going to be an important trend in 2022. If you have not done a market wage survey, you need to. You need to look at what your competitors are doing. You need to look at other jobs that may not be your direct competitor, but that are within your local area, because they are also ways, organizations that could pull your people. Yeah, I wrote an article towards the end of last year about the Great Resignation, and compensation was a big chunk of that article. And stop. You're really embarrassing. Nobody wants to hear you. Go lay down. Is it because you want to be on camera? Is that your problem? Yes. So let's think about this. With your compensation practices, inflation is currently, what, 6% right now? 5.4, something like that? Tomorrow it could be 7. Who knows? So here's the thing. If you've traditionally given a 2.5% or 3% cost of living adjustment, your employees have actually taken a pay cut. Okay. So bonuses, reimbursements, greater flexibility. I'm so go lay down and be quiet. All of those things are really going to show appreciation for those who have even stepped up. So, meaningful bonuses. And remember, when we give bonuses, they're taxed at a higher tax rate. So, if it's $100, they're going to get like $40 of it. Okay. Is that meaningful? It may or may not be. I'm not saying you have to give $10,000. Don't worry, I would take the $10,000. But, you have to look at those things. If you want to attract and retain top talent, you've got to show them where the money is. Okay. Having somebody that's doing the job of 1.5 is great for a little while. But at some point, you're going to have to up their compensation so that they feel like all of this extra work that I'm doing that really is for 2 people, but I'm doing it all, is meaningful, is worth the time and the sacrifice. Okay. This also is an important reminder about having established labor grades. Okay. You should have hiring ranges. You should have midpoints. You should have rules around how you screen, hire, and move people within your compensation practices. Okay. It should all be tied into performance. Yes, you can get creative with additional compensation and bonuses and reimbursements and those sorts of things, but there needs to be a formal compensation plan for every organization. Otherwise, what happens is we get into a situation where Susie's been here for 5 years, and then you have Mary, who's hired in, who has maybe the same experience, maybe a little bit less, different type environment, but Mary's brought in $5,000 more than what Susie's making. But Susie's been here for 5 years. Now we've got a wage compression and an inequality piece going on here. Okay, so I see it in every organization. It happens. But when you have managers just doing what they need to do to get people in the door, which is a double-edged sword right now because we're in a labor crisis, okay, it creates unintended consequences for your culture and your existing employees, because then they're far behind. And trust me, if you think they don't talk about money, they do. Also, reminder, you cannot forbid them from talking about money. Okay, it's protected concerted activity under the National Labor Relations Act. You can strongly discourage it because of the conflict that it can create. However, you cannot have a policy that says you are forbidden or you're not to discuss your wages with so-and-so. Okay, that's illegal. And remote work, obviously, still a huge trend, and things that need to be challenged. Now, certainly, just because people are working from home does not mean that they should not have performance standards, check-ins, and that sort of thing. Some people do wonderful at it, and other people, it doesn't work well. So, with the push to return to office for some folks, does it really have to be done on site? What is the accomplishment, or what are we trying to accomplish by bringing people back? Where's that value? Can we still have the same outcomes by maintaining remote work? So, all things to think about. So I know I covered a lot in about 45 minutes. David, what do you have for me? What's going on?
Well, we don't have any questions yet. We do have Melissa, who says that she thinks she may have worked for your client that had the mahogany row. And then right now,
that's funny.
Now we've got Shelly that wants to see the dog.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Cooper, would you like to say hello to everybody?
Aw.
Thank you for joining our conference call today, Cooper.
I thought it was really interesting what there are a couple of points that really stood out to me that you mentioned, and one was just the reason for work and being able, like being in marketing, that resonates with me, like having to communicate the meaningfulness of what you do, and in order to do that, you got to know it, which means you might have to like figure out, yeah, what is it that we do? Why does what we do have meaning? And it's not as difficult as you think, but it's really important to understand so you can communicate it.
It's not that difficult. I call it the line of sight, or another term is what is our why?
Right.
And some of you all may have read that book or watched that video. And it is really, really important to help understand. Yes, obviously do you want to talk again? Is that what your problem is? Yes, we know we offer products and services, etc. That's easy. All employees can see that. But from a leadership perspective, really taking it back down to what else does the organization do that's important, and why, and how your role impacts our ability to do that is something that's really, really important. He's extra today. I'm so sorry.
No, that's beautiful. I'll just open it up to questions. What questions do you guys have for Jamie regarding this topic, or any experiences that anyone on the call can share? Just go ahead and please type it into the chat. Again, the chat is at least on my version of Teams, it's all the way up there at the top. There's a little speech bubble near the kind of on the same row as the video and the mic button. You can just click on that. It'll open up a new pane, and you can type your chat right in there, or type your question right in there. Well, another thing that came to mind, and it was a phrase that I heard many years ago. Talked about, it was a professor that talked about management by walking around, and he was a big proponent of, hey, this isn't that difficult. You need to get out and get around. And it resonated when you started talking about being seen. And you're right, it can be more challenging when we may not work in the same area, the same building, the same state. And how do you do that? How do you get out and walk around? So since we don't have any questions popping up, how do you see clients handling that now? Like, how in the world do you communicate without over communicating, and how do you communicate in a manner that is meaningful when, yes, you may be managing folks that you never physically see?
Right. I think what and this kind of goes back to, there was a Gallup Q12 survey years ago, and one of the questions on the survey was, in the last 7 days, has somebody talked to me about my performance, good or bad? And so I think what I'm encouraging, what I'm seeing from many of my clients, is that you have to be intentional, that's not even a word, intentional on scheduling one-on-ones, weekly touch points. And if you have the ability, even if it's, look, we work remote, but instead of a Zoom, you're 40 minutes away, let's meet in the middle. Let's grab coffee and let's do our one-on-one there. So you can get creative in how to do that. But to your point, there may be newer employees that have never physically been in person. So, you also have to think about your onboarding processes, how you're structuring these one-on-ones and annual evals, and all of these things that is really important. But I think getting creative, definitely Zoom is wonderful. But if you have a situation where we don't have like a long-standing relationship, then that leader needs to find ways to connect. And so perhaps that one-on-one is more initially structured just to get to know people and to talk, and it doesn't even deal with work, to establish that relationship so that in future one-on-ones, weekly touch points, it can be meaningful.
I'm just going to read a comment from Kim. It says, great that you covered the info on the surveys. Just this morning, they were in a meeting regarding completing a survey for volunteerism. We agreed that we should circle back to HR to validate the survey so they can relay to the leaders and share any policy guidelines. So she commented it was great information. So when you were going over that, does SESCO, is that a service you guys provide, like certain employee surveys then?
It is. It's obviously a separate billable project. Right. We are one of the few statistically valid and reliable surveys on the market. Ours it's long. I'm not going to lie. There are, I think 75 employee questions and then 125 manager questions, different categories. So you've got job security, performance, recognition, benefits, pay, communication, you name it, it's broken out. Certainly can quote that for anybody. It's based on size and on-site versus electronic surveys, but there is merit into outsourcing. And again, that's not saying you have to use SESCO, because there are other companies out there that do that. But employees tend to feel more at peace when they know the survey isn't going directly to HR. It's going to somebody else who's going to process the results, and it's not tied to, my name, or not linked back to me. So when my open comments, come through and it's broken out. So, things have to be structured well. Also the report results is like, it comes in this thick binder, broken out by category. There's statistical results, there's national averages that we compare them to. There's then, organizational development plans that come along with it. So it is a robust process. And I have seen, wonderful groups that take it seriously and that really work hard to work through that feedback and those action plans. And then I have seen other companies that have paid good money to do the process that set the binder on the shelf and we're like, well, no, we don't have time to do all that because it's not within, not a huge priority. And the problem with that is the next time that you go to repeat the survey,
right,
they're going to remember that, and those results will come out. So you're really doing yourself no justice if you're going to get the survey results and take no action. And that doesn't mean you can do everything that's in the org plan. Obviously, you have to look at the feasibility and what they're asking, and it's a slow play. Right. So there's a lot there. I see another question coming in about how do you go about obtaining a market wage survey? Mm-hmm. Again, that's a service that we do offer. We do them all the time. In fact, we are rolling out a massive statewide survey for it's a political subdivision of the state organization. Or organizations throughout the state that are sub-part of the Commonwealth. So something that certainly can be discussed more one-on-one, because that's going to be tailored to your organization, what industry you're in, where you want to survey, how many positions, all of those things play into the fee estimate there.
And I'll just take that opportunity to say, hey, if you do not have a contact at SESCO, reach out to your Bankers Insurance sales rep, and we can get the conversation started.
Yep, for sure.
But with that, we are at our time. So I'll go ahead and just say thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for everyone that was on the call. I will share out the video and to everyone who was registered. And Jamie, I think you mentioned, are you going to be able to share those slides as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, I
So-
certainly will.
Okay, so I'll make sure when I shoot out that email that I include those as well. But thank you, Jamie. Thanks so much for all of your support and your advice. Thank you to our clients. And if you're not a client, go ahead and talk to whoever it was that invited you. And if you have any insurance questions whatsoever, we'd be happy to be able to help you in that way. But thanks again, and to everybody, enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, David. Y'all take care. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.